Hey there, this is attorney Sarah Holmes of Holmes Business Law P.C. We are a business and trademark law firm that also provides general counsel subscription services to business owners. Today we wanted to give you some small business contract tips. Most businesses use contracts. Now, we also find that most businesses, small businesses especially, aren't necessarily reading those contracts. So whether they're using a template they got somewhere else, maybe they're using a template that was developed many years ago, most people do not read contracts. And I also can tell you this because our office gives out our own contracts for clients to sign, and we can tell by the questions they ask us, maybe a few days, maybe a few months later, that they didn't actually read the contract we had them sign. So it's very, very important to read contracts and to understand what they say. If you're a business owner giving out contracts to other people to sign, it's critical that you know what you're asking people to sign and that those are the terms that you want people to be bound by. Contracts, if you really use them properly, can be absolutely magical for your business. Now, that sounds pretty heavy, but really, if you think about what you can do with the contract, it is business magic. So what can contracts do? Number one, they can certainly protect you from liability, which is what most people think of a contract, like, hey, I'm going to hedge my bets and put this stuff in writing and I can enforce it later. That's number one. Number two, though, that I think most people don't really understand or realize is that a contract can shift the risk and can shift liability to another party. So you can use different clauses in a contract. Indemnification is the big one, where you can actually say, hey, if I'm found responsible for doing something wrong and there's a judgment against my business, I don't actually have to pay this. I'm not the one responsible, you are. And you can do that in a contract. You can shift that risk to someone else. The other thing you can really do in a contract is set standards and expectations for behavior, not only for yourself and your company, but for the other side, the person or the company you are doing business with. For example, a lot of people find this out with enough experience. Let's say you have a consulting company and you're working with clients and your clients are always late giving you the data that you need for deliverables. Let's say that there's a timeline in your contracts where you're expected to produce these things as a consultant in a timely manner for people. Let's say that your deliverables are late, but it's not your fault that they're late. It's the fault of your client because they are late giving you data and communicating with you. Those are standards that you can set in the contract. You can say, hey, like, you have to reasonably respond to requests for data. Please turn this around within 10 days. If you're late giving us materials and it backs up our timelines, that's not our fault, that's your fault, you still have to pay, and things of that nature. You can't terminate the contract because it's not our fault. Those are big things to put in there. You can also outline in a contract who is going to own the things that you're producing. This is also really critical and something that gets overlooked all the time. So let's go back to the example of you being a consultant producing deliverables for a client. When you produce those deliverables to a client, who owns those? Do you still own them as the consultant, or does your client now own them because they paid you to make them for them? Now, there's even thornier issues if you're a consultant and let's say you have a methodology or you have materials that you use for a lot of clients. You're not just going to use it for this client, but you're going to incorporate your own things and put it in this client's deliverable into your work product. Who owns that? Now, are you giving your client ownership over things that you already own? How does that get spelled out? Well, the real answer is that stuff should go in the contract. Those terms should be very clearly laid out, such as, hey, anything I owned before this contract, I continue to own. Anything you pay me to produce just for you, you own. Now, you have to be careful because sometimes consultants especially will want to reuse things that they produced for a client. They want to reuse them with other clients. And you have to really think about what's the language in your contract. Does it allow you to do that or does it not allow you to do that? And that's really important. Another important clause in a contract is a limitation of liability. So again, let's go with the consulting example because it's super easy. Let's say that you have a consulting contract with a client and under this contract, they're going to pay you $20,000 to do some work, right? Well, let's say something gets messed up along the way and your client sues you for $1 million, right? How can they sue you for $1 million? They only ever paid you $20,000 under this contract. Doesn't that seem unfair and kind of out of the scope of this contract? It's too much, right? Well, if you don't have any limitations in your contract, that is not necessarily limited. If they take you to court and a judge or jury finds you're liable for $1 million, that's it, you're liable for $1 million. Now, your contract, you could shrink that down. You could have language in your contract that actually says, I will never be liable to you for more than the amount of money you have paid me under this contract. Language in a contract like that is gold, absolutely gold. And again, this is kind of back why contracts can be magical for your business. You can also say you cannot sue me for exemplary damages, extraordinary damages, punitive damages, which are all the things that could potentially drive up the value of someone's claim. You can absolutely eliminate those in a B2B business contract with someone. So used properly, contracts, again, I will tell you the word is magical, absolutely magical for your business, but they have to be drafted properly. You have to use them the right way. You really have to read them and understand what they say. So of course, if you need help with a business contract, you can feel free to reach out to our office. Our number is 215-482-0285. Thanks.